Hello, welcome to Find the Link. And these sessions are about relationships. This is session 5. My name is Temitope Ayobami Ayedun, but I call myself Temitope Praising Child these days. And we've had some great sessions. Our very first welcome session was about brokenness and healing, the 5 love languages. Then the first session was about motives, bias, prejudice. And the second session was about identity issues. Session 3 was about the place of maturity. Session 4 was about the art of presentation. And this is session 5, and we're going to be going into it shortly. And I will be sharing my screen in a bit. Okay. So, making choices is the title of today's sessions. This session, I mean. And choices are the hinges of destiny. This session is supposed to be about 45 to an hour long, just in case you were wondering. And the hinges of destiny just means it determines what happens in our future. It determines what happens to us eventually. And so our choices are quite important. I will probably be focusing more on relationships because that's what the sessions are about. But you can relate it to anything, really. And just because I'm a foodie, I had to slot this in. So we see this huge platter of food, different kinds of food. We can see fruits at one part, we can see fried food, we can see rice, we can see salad. So it's all about choices. So one person can come and say, no, I don't want anything fried. I want fruit. I don't want rice. I don't eat greens, different things like that. And it's just to say that one person's choice may not necessarily be the choice of another, but it's really important that we make good choices because it affects the course of our lives. Okay, so very briefly, the outline for this meeting. Making choices in relationships hinges on availability, the knowledge base, meaning what you know, how you make decisions, and number 4 there is useful adjuncts to make choices, because we're talking about making choices in this session. There are some other things that I'll slot in towards the end that are not on this outline that we'll see as we go along. So having choices, meaning the availability, and that there are usually more than one option, which gives us the opportunity to choose between them. Sorry for the typo. And if you have only one option, there is no choice to be made. And then there are questions to ask yourself that, do you have choices? Has there been a point in your life where you had options and you needed to choose? And I'm sure we've all had times like that in our lives. Okay. 1 minute. Yeah, so this lovely quote from Catherine Pulsiver says, life presents many choices. The choices we make determine our future, which is like the first slide. Okay, so the knowledge base is that ignorance of your available options limits your decision-making, limits your ability to choose. And this ignorance can be driven by many things, including assumptions, accepted cultural beliefs, or a lack of exposure. And if I just expatiate on that a bit, so some people can assume that they would never find a wife in their country of origin, like there are no longer any good girls in Nigeria, they're all abroad. And some people abroad may decide that there are no longer any good men in the UK or America and that they're all in Nigeria. And those are assumptions, they're not true. But sometimes we wonder, why do we believe them? What drives those beliefs? Cultural beliefs, which we probably talked about in the session on bias and prejudice. So things about if the person is young, if the person is too young, it might not be good enough. If the person is too old, maybe fertility might be compromised, and then that makes them not a good option, things like that, which are not necessarily true when we look at it critically. Okay, and then the lack of exposure. So some people might not know that there is a huge pool of people waiting online, waiting for relationships that can happen via the online route. So that's a lack of exposure. So they think it's only people that they see or people that they've met before that are their available options, and thereby limits their choices. Okay. You shape your future every day through the choices you make. It's easier to say you're a victim of circumstances, and then you won't need to act because your choices create your reality. And we see this when we'll talk about how other people can make choices for you, and how sometimes people allow that kind of thing to happen just because it absolves them of the responsibility of paying for the consequences of their actions because they took it. So they'd rather blame someone else. It's a bit easier that way. But that is just quite childish behavior. Okay. And this is about deciding or decision making. So it's possible to have choices, to have knowledge of them, and still decide not to make any choices. And I must say that deciding not to make any choice is a choice in itself. So in that sense, there's really no sitting on the fence. You're either making a choice or you're not making a choice. There's no middle ground really, because not making a choice is a choice. And not making those choices, regardless of the availability and the knowledge of those choices, can be due to things like fear. And fear is widespread, various forms of fear based on different kinds of experiences and knowledge. And it could be a fear of failure, maybe because someone that they know has failed or that they have failed before and they don't want to fail again. And that kind of stops them from moving forward. It could be the fear of the future, just because the future is unknown to them. They don't know what it holds. They don't know what is going to change. They don't know whether there's going to be money, there's going to be cash. They don't know whether they're going to be good fathers or good mothers. And they're just thinking so far ahead that they're practically paralyzed by this unknown future. And then some people are unable to make decisions because they have decisions made for them by others. And sometimes these decisions are imposed on them. In some other settings, the decisions are not quite imposed on them, but they do not make a decision, and thereby other people feel forced to make their decisions for them. And sometimes the present circumstances that people are in make them decide that they don't want to make any choices. So they might feel they are not wealthy enough. They've not gotten to that point where they think they're able to speak to somebody else or that they're able to provide for somebody else. And these are valid things, so they're not particularly bad. They're just things that I'm bringing to our notice if we're not aware or considering them. So these are things that make people not make choices. And then their feelings of unworthiness. They don't feel they can trust somebody. We would say it's related to fear actually, but it's part of an identity issue about how they feel about themselves. And so they decide not to make any choices and then just decide, okay, maybe it would happen, maybe it won't happen. Let's just see how it goes. They sweep by and by, and they're not proactive about anything. They're very passive. And some things happen for passive people, but they're more likely to happen for people who are actively pursuing their goals. Some people, negative stories make them not have make the choice not to do anything about a prospective spouse. And that's also related to fear. Because those stories become so pervasive that they begin to internalize it and think, oh, if it happens to this great man of God, who says it will not happen to me? If they say 50% of the world's population that get married end in divorce, who says I will not be part of the 50%? And they just think and think about it and are so negative about what can happen. And they forget that there's another 50% who had great relationships that really worked out. Okay. So who decides? So the individual can decide, others can decide. I've put God in inverted commas with a question mark there, because I know probably some of us know God, or hopefully we all do. But some people think it is God that decides for them. They say it's God that's what they say. I don't doubt that, that God has a huge part to play in our lives, but there's a reason why he gave us a will. So we have options, and we can decide to let him be part of our decision making, but we still end up choosing. There are very few instances where God forced somebody to do something. And none of those instances were instances of finding a spouse or a partner. So if I want to, because I like Bible stories, sorry, apologies. If I want to pick a story about maybe God forcing someone to do something, we'll say maybe Jonah. So Jonah was supposed to go deliver a message. He didn't want to go, and God practically forced him. Well, he ended up going one way or the other. But it's never been about, apart from Adam and Eve, in which God actually brought him a wife. Every other person has had to choose since then. And even that one, God was blamed for that decision. But I still believe he plays a huge part in what we choose if we let him have his way. Okay. And the other thing about God, but we'll talk about that later. There's sometimes we think, oh, maybe God led me to do something that was not right and things like that. But no one can debate your conviction for you. So that is really your choice. And no one can argue it with you either. So the choice to take action to accomplish what you want or what you deserve is entirely up to you. No one is going to seek you out, and no one is going to do it for you. It is your move. And that's by Catherine Pulsiver. But we do know that people directly or indirectly can influence the choices we make. Okay, so there are some adjuncts to making choices, and I've probably just breezed on them a little bit from the start. And one's about the sense of identity. So if you know who you are and you know where you're going, then it's easy to decide who you want on the journey with you. It kind of makes it easier. But if you've not made that decision yet, it's a bit harder, I would say. And it could be risky as well for whoever chooses to go into a relationship with you when you've not defined exactly who you are, where you're going. And there's the power of sight. So I'll say there's hindsight. So that means you've learned from experiences in your past or the experiences of others. And then there's insights, meaning you've thought deeply about things. You're able to reflect, you're able to get inspiration, or we might say intuition as well, from your experience or the things you know. And then there's foresight, meaning you're able to see the future. Some people in the parlance of society would call it projection. You're able to project that if you marry this woman, you're going to be a rich man, or if you marry this man, you're going to be a power couple. So that's some form of projection. Spiritual people would probably say they have revelation, they can prophesy or they can see, but the power of sight cannot be overemphasized. And then there are wise counselors. So anyone that wants to wage war or wants to accomplish anything good will know that you need wise counselors along the way, just because they make such a huge difference. And there's no point gathering counselors if they're all foolish or you're all thinking the same way. Should be people that have either gone ahead or they have a lot of insight into what you're about to embark upon. Okay. And then there's time. Time is quite a great factor because the passage of time reveals people to themselves. And sometimes it reveals some people's pretentiousness because things are not always as they appear. Okay. So this, we're talking about God's will just briefly again. It's not automatic. He allows us to make choices. And that's by Rick Warren. That many of the things that happen might not be God's perfect will. We have to choose between our will and his will. So it's about, well, who are we? Who do we owe allegiance to? So there are people that say they want to follow God, but when push comes to shove and they have to decide about their reputation or their ego or what might happen to their finances, then we realize that they're not really very, very keen to follow God, actually, that it's kind of conditional. Okay, so the outcomes, I'll say, could be the chosen, meaning you might be chosen in this, and we're hoping to be chosen. But it's important to know that you are a choice one, and to know that chosen, choice one are all part of options. And that is what is on the next slide. So the choice one is part of the options until chosen. A good choice may not be your choice. And there's a very beautiful Yoruba proverb that kind of talks about this, and I'll just say it for those that might understand that. So this thing is good. It does not mean I like it. It doesn't mean that's what I want. So that's why we might see somebody that likes a particular person, but another person might think, really, what's that about? What did you find? But we all know what we're looking for, and we all know what we want, or hopefully we do. The other thing is that the choice can be changed, and the most important factor that does not change in life is actually change. So change can happen. It might not happen, and we hope it does not happen after you've been chosen, but it can happen. So keep that at the back of our minds. And are you part of the choice ones? These are just questions to ruminate about. Are you the one of whom it will be spoken that I'll choose you again and again? And we'll see that some people, they're just going through the motions. They don't particularly enjoy where they are in their relationships. So they're not in a position to say they'll choose their spouse again and again. They kind of think, well, if I had an option, if I had a choice right now, in my heart of hearts, I might not choose this person, but some things cannot be said, so they probably will not say that. But it's important that we are continuously evolving and improving so that we become those kind of people. And then there are some people that think they are a good choice, but they are not really, because they might not have the factors that we would call making a good choice. And then there's some people that are actually really choice people. They're great people. They would have been great partners. Of course, it depends on what you're looking for or looking at. But they don't know. They have no idea that they're good people. And because they don't know, they allow themselves to be roughshod by people who could care less. And of course, there are some people who have a strong sense of identity. They know they are choice people, and they wait for the right people to come their way, and they choose them, or they are chosen by them. Okay. That's a couple who have probably weathered a lot of storms together. Only when we accept the fact that we are where we are because of choices we've made in the past can we live every day of the rest of our lives in the certain knowledge that we can do anything we want to do if we simply make the right choices. And sometimes we do not make the right choices, but if we make a bad choice, it's very important that we learn from it and we make better choices. So, open to questions and comments. I'll just finish this slide and then so that I can see all your faces again. Session 6 is on managing expectations. Change, and red flags. I think it's going to be great. Thank you for listening. See you at the Q&A tomorrow. That's the Zoom ID. It's not going to change for the Saturday or the Sunday. 3 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Nigeria. The others, I hope you can find your time zones. The Q&A is always on the Living Your Dreams page. And if you have any feedback, please send to temitopepresentchild@gmail.com. And there should be a welcome survey floating around. I think one of the co-hosts would kindly put that on the chat box, and there's some online groups, WhatsApp group for now, and another group that I'm working on. So these are the final words, and I'd like us to start saying them and get used to them. Stay in peace, shine your light, and use your power. Okay. And that is it for today. And then I'll just like to take some comments from all of us. If we have something to share, something that's resonated with you, any comments, please feel free to share now. If you don't mind raising your hand or putting it in the chat box, that'll be amazing. So I want to hear from all of you, singles, married. Have you had to make some choices?
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, so this is Moji.
Hi, Moji.
Hi, so I just, so you talked, it was quite interesting when you made mention of choices. I think for me, I think what I eventually am beginning to discover is how we can decide to be choosers.
Yes.
So it's not enough that you're waiting for somebody to make a choice about you. I think a more empowering position to take is the position of a chooser. And this goes for either you are male or female.
Absolutely.
So I don't think you should ever get into a place or a mindset where you feel that like I don't have any options left. You know, like the things you mentioned before about fear, about assumptions, about all those things. So if you are going to be the chooser, what is your criteria for choosing a friend? What is your criteria for choosing a potential spouse? What are your like, this person must have, if this person is going to be my friend, you must have this certain characteristics before I can even, let you into that space.
Yes.
Of course, nobody is perfect. Nobody's looking for a saint, but there are just some things that must be there. That could vary from person. What might be an essential for me might not be the same essential for somebody else.
Yes.
But I think we need to take a more proactive approach as to these different categories of relationships, friendships, business ships, I mean, whatever relationship you want to be in, you must determine what's that person, whatever criteria, essential criteria. I'll call them some like essential criteria, some like, okay, if it's there, fine. If it's not there, that's okay. You understand? And I think for every category of relationship, whether a friendship, a romantic relationship, a business association, whoever you want to associate with, I think those things are quite essential. And I think also those things help us define boundaries too, and in a sense, they help keep us safe. So I would like to take the position of the chooser if I feel that, I mean, I assess in a relationship and I see that, oh, this person, I don't want this person because our values don't align. This person has some character flaws I really can't stick with on a long term, or I don't want to be in my space. Then decide and choose and say, I don't want to be in a relationship with this person, or I don't want to meet with this person. So it is always, I mean, we can't be passive about that. We need to really be quite proactive about that. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Mojisola. I think you've highlighted some very important points, especially the part of taking the position of a chooser. I think most of us are from Nigeria, which is the part I am from, in which it is expected that a man makes a choice to marry a woman and a woman just sits very passively waiting for him to come and choose her. So based on that background, we're not very active in any form of pursuit, which is not bad, which is just fine. However, we need to be actively deciding whether we are letting people into our space or not, and not let that power of choice be taken from us. So I really, really appreciate that. And you highlighted some other points which kind of border about having core values, if I got you right. And those definitely are so important. They will definitely rule out some people and rule in some people. And we'll also realize that these days there are some people that are in such a rush that from the first two encounters, they're already saying, can I call you every day? My sweetheart, my love. They're already very effusive with affectionate terms. And it's just as though they just want to jump into a relationship. And it does not happen like that, because it takes time to know people, and it takes time to understand people and where they're coming from. And though there are many ways to try and make it a bit faster by improving our powers of observation and asking the right questions, but at the same time, there are some things that cannot be rushed. And having a goal, because you've talked about relationships and business ships and all kinds of ships. So for friendships, it might be something as basic as, is my friend improving me or bringing me down? As in, are they taking me up or they are bringing me down? Are they making my life better? It's just as simple as that. And I think we should never go even less for a spouse or a lifetime partner. I think it's so important. But yeah, you've mentioned about the fact that we can be flexible. You've mentioned on a lot of things that are fantastic. About the fact that you can say, I cannot accept this. So immediately you see it from the word go, you just remove your leg and use reverse to move back and decide that another person would come that is good. So but sometimes that does not happen because people do not trust God and they just think time is running out on them. And then they decide to accept anything that comes their way. And it's just rather unfortunate. And if we have the background of God watching over us and deciding that good things are going to come our way, and we stay positive and we keep getting better, there's no reason under the sun why we should accept anything less than the very best. I used to know a very lovely woman. I met her when she was not very well. But when she was in hospital and I went to see her one morning, they brought some snacks to her room. I said, oh, these croissants, are they from, she named one supermarket, and her daughter said yes. And then she said, oh, they're the very best. Only the best is good enough. I never forgot that line. The woman has died some years ago. She was an elderly lady. But only the best is good enough. Even people in the world know that only the best is good for them. So why will you, as God's children, the king's kids, now accept anything less than the best? The other thing that is quite pervasive is that people say, your standards are too high. You need to... Your standards are too high. You don't know how old you are. I think, where are people getting that from? Are we supposed to lower standards when you are talking about a lifetime relationship? I think it's absolutely outrageous. And it's only people that do not know who they are or where they are going that will decide to be lowering standards when there is so much at stake. So much. Your future, your children's future, your future dynasty, and the next 3 generations are quite hinged on the kind of relationships you form. So it is so important. Someone, Tommy, please speak. Thank you.
Hi, I think you spoke my mind just before I was about to raise my hand when you said that they say you're too choosy. I've heard that a million times, and I'm like, I beg. Choice is important, like you said, and it dictates a lot of things. And I think this last week I've been seeing a lot of comments that say, you can't choose your parents, you can't choose your siblings, but you can choose your children's parent, your children's parents. So
absolutely,
wherever you choose, like, there are some, and what you also mentioned the fact that people like to rush. They meet you one day and then the next day they're talking marriage. I'm like, come on. Even friendships do not develop that fast. Like, how would you go from 0 to 100 in less than a week? There are certain things, there's the parts where, God would tell you, and time is also important. It reveals a lot about people there. You can only pretend, and that's the same thing. Like if 2 people are being introduced, they're going to pretend and pretend, but time takes away that pretense. You want to see how the person, behaves under pressure. You want to see how the person, behaves, to people around him. Is he respectful? Is he or she, are they pleasant to be around? Do they have a horrible temper? There are people who say, oh, okay, I saw signs of, the way he reacted once, and I
Yeah.
didn't pay no notes. But if you had like a really short courtship, there's no ways you can pretend. People can pretend for even up to 2 years. One is not saying wait that long, but at the end of the day, you have to have there's a concept of time, and the fact that God gave you brains to choose.
Yeah.
If he wanted, and everybody to marry each other, you just pay off and you get married. But time tells you, the Holy Spirit will tell you as well, and then you have a brain to choose the kind of person you are. I'm not going to sit down with somebody who cannot talk.
Yeah.
You're having a discussion and it's yes and no. At the end of the day, like somebody I was listening to a tape, was yesterday, and the person said, see, that marriage is mostly friendship.
Yes.
If you have someone
Absolutely.
sitting at home that you can't talk to, what are you going to be doing for 22 out of 24 hours in a day?
Yeah.
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 At the end of the day, most of the time you're going to spend so much time around that person. Is that person the
Yes.
kind of person you want to be around? My 2 cents. Let me not hug the mic.
Thank you so much for sharing, Tommy. And I think these are really valid points that I think everybody needs to think about quite deeply before taking the leap. And I know some people get into relationships because there's so much pressure. And because of that pressure, sometimes they get introduced to somebody that, this person is good. What are you waiting for? Go ahead. And then because they've not taken the time and they want to please everybody. They've grown up pleasing their parents and pleasing everybody. And then they make their decision trying to please everybody again. And then they get into it and then they realize it's not what they wanted and it's not what they would ever want. And then they then have to make a decision whether they want to stay there for the rest of their lives or they choose to move on. Sometimes the decision is made for them, but other times they might have to decide whether it's worth staying in. And unfortunately, some people do spend their whole lives in such very sad relationships, and it's a bit unfortunate. But I'm hoping that from this talk, we have gotten more insight. And I don't know whether anyone else wants to speak about this or raise their hands. We've not gotten any talk from those who are married. I think we have some married people on the platform. Please feel free to contribute before I start calling names. Yeah. So married people. Yes, I think I've seen another hand somewhere. Someone raising a hand just now. I think I saw a hand. Yes, Abim Bola, you want to speak? Zahabij, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Sorry,
Hello.
not good, but across the world, we know the time. It's nice to be here again. This issue, marriage, is always very, 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 very key when anyone is discussing it because it's beyond what we think it is. And many times people just think it's because even as a wedding planner, one of the things that I pray to God to always help me do is prevent certain things from happening. And once we were able to prevent a marriage that wasn't looking it happen, and I was grateful to God that it didn't happen. So many times people are what's the word? People are they're super excited about the wedding day, forgetting that or they're super excited about getting hooked. That's the word.
Yeah.
Rather than seeing beyond the hookness, if there is a word like that, you know what I mean.
Yes.
So recently my mom just told me, guess what, oh, your dad was singing for me 2 days ago and he was really dancing. And I was like, wow, I'm super excited. These people are around 70 and thereabout, so I was super excited that I'm like, so this is what I'm supposed to emulate. Like, seriously, all the children are not at home. And then there's still that unity. There's still that friendship, even after so many years. That's what I seek. That's what I pray for. And when I plan weddings, I pray to God that none of our couples have issues like that, not having that friendship first before deciding to get married. It's very funny how that we use age as a factor. Even in Africa, we do that a lot. It's very upsetting that you think that a woman is nobody because she's not married, or because you think that a woman is not somebody because she's not married. It's very upsetting, So this decision to choose and the decision to make that decision to spend the rest of your life with somebody makes or mars you. So it's very important we don't make the wrong decisions. It is better to remain single for life than marry wrong. Very key.
Absolutely. You are correct, and you've raised a lot of valid points. Yes, it is a lifetime commitment, and it's one that should be entered into carefully. Sometimes that's the reason why some people shy from making that decision in the first place, because they just believe that it's so risky. And sometimes you take the risk and it turns out wrong, and then you learn from it and you take the risk again. We are human beings. We take risks, we move forward, we make the most of it. Sometimes it turns out as we planned, and sometimes it doesn't turn out as we planned, and we pick up ourselves and move on. And that's the way it should be. It's unfortunate that there is a bit of backwardness and miseducation and illiteracy in Africa and in Nigeria sometimes regarding relationships. And sometimes people are not valued based on their character or what they bring to the table. I think people should first be acknowledged as human beings, first of all. And that lets us treat everybody from young to old and whichever gender with a lot of respect and dignity. I can see that Chinedu Ada Akiti wants to speak. Please speak on. Sorry, Chinedu. Bukola wants to speak. I think she had raised her hand before you. So let Bukola speak first, followed by Chinedu, please. Thank you. Bukola, do you mind unmuting yourself? Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Whatever time frame of the day you are.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give a general greeting because here we are in the evening.
Okay.
The section is very insightful. Thank you so much for sharing. And one thing I want to share is that it's very, when the Bible talks about in Habakkuk, where it says, write the vision, make it plain that he that reads may run. I think most times as people, we usually don't write, especially when it comes to relationship, we don't write the expectations of what we want, right? And when you don't write the expectation of what you want, whatever comes your way will look like it. So you now begin to get into a trial and error instance. But when you know what you want, when you have it, not just knowing, you have it written down, right? It helps you to, take away the weed from the wheat. And I think it's a very, very powerful thing that people need to use, even in any type of relationship, especially getting into marriage. It's very important. I'm a person that, writing down the vision, especially for a kind of spouse I want, has really helped, right? Really, really helped. And when I saw my husband, I knew it was the one. Not on the first day we met, over time with friendship, right? I remember I wrote a list when I was in my younger years.
Sorry, 1 minute. Let me just mute everybody because I can hear some background noise, and then unmute yourself again.
Okay.
Yes, you can unmute yourself again. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and when we became friends, and then when it was time to take it to the next level, I remember that I had the list, and I went to check the list to check if my proposed was fit into what I wanted. When I checked it, it actually ticked up over 70% on my list. The other 30% were just like, okay, he's not from the same tribe as me, which is very, very minute. But every other thing fits perfectly except for those parts. So it was easy for me to know that this is the one. And I also asked him as well. He also had the list as well. So when he met me, he also cross-checked on his list and met. And that gives you, as a lady, gives you a power to choose as well. Because when you have your list, you don't have to go up to the man. Like, let's say in Africa, we're very shy about going up to the man. For those that can, please do, right? You don't have to if you don't want to. But when you have your list, when the right man comes to you, right, it's easy for you to know now this is the person. And it's easy for you to map out strategies to ensure you get that person as your friend and to ensure you make sure he sees you, right? So for me, I think it's very, very important as people that whatever relationship and experiences we have in life, especially for a relationship, write it out. No matter how is you want a tall guy, I'll be right tall. You want shorts, you want what, write everything. You want him to support your dream, write it out. It is very, very important. And man, it's still his list. Writing the vision. That's just his list.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that idea. That's amazing. I'm sure if we're students of the Bible, we've probably read it that write the vision down. Write the vision down is for a particular season. And we know how important it is to write it down, but sometimes we don't write it down. But for the few of us who have written it down in the past, we've probably seen how much power comes from it and how it makes things really, really clear for everybody. And I'll just take Chinedu's comments now. And I think we might be rounding up after that if we have no other comments.
Okay, so firstly, I'm sorry I joined late. Another meeting overran this one, so okay. I'm sure I might have missed out some important gems. I'm hoping to catch up tomorrow's review session. Okay, so I just wanted to say two things with regards to choosing. That I found that I think what's most critical for most of us is the state of our hearts. And consciously or unconsciously, a lot of us don't feel desirable, lovable, choosable. And so we can do all the 10 steps of finding a spouse, whatever, and somehow we will self-destruct, even if the great person comes, we will destroy that relationship because we don't feel worthy. And for someone like me who feels relatively confident, I was shocked when, just recently I was having a conversation with God and he says, you you haven't dealt with self-esteem issues. And, I was like, really? Are you just telling me now? So there's a place of koinonia with God that's required for us to be stable enough to be the kind of person that God wants to give to his prince or king. And I think that we need to be honest enough to realize that you cannot make a good choice if you are not a good choice yourself. So rather than seeking, a lot of times where I'm 35, I'm 40, I need to have a child, and those are valid needs, but we're talking about the King of Kings who owns everything. And if you're concerned, this year alone, I think I had like 2 friends who chose to get pregnant, and originally I was a bit upset because I thought, these are believers. I know them. I know they were not pretending that they loved God. But somehow they chose having a child above God. That's how I've concluded it. I'm not there with them and their father. But my point is, it's at the real issue going on is how are you feeling deep inside? Beyond the shouts of hallelujah, it's going to be done. This is the year. When you are on your own, do you really believe you are worthy of this love, this choice? Because sometimes, and I'm being honest, sometimes, especially as you age, you begin to people begin to tell you, you are on the shelf, there are younger people, but those are all external things. Because really and truly, the reason the person who is supposed to be your husband or wife will choose you is not because you are 35 or 50. It's because they have a connection with you. They believe, hopefully, I don't want to marry a man who just thinks I'm a fine face. I want a man who chooses me because he knows I'm connected to his destiny. And without me, he will not attain it. He will not build the kind of nations that God has called him to build without me. I don't want anybody who's marrying me because I'm fine, I have money. No, too Monday. So I said all this to say that, please, let's also pay attention to our hearts. Where are we part-time? Because it really affects the outcome. It really affects us feeling. A few years ago, I wouldn't have felt like, so I can even choose. Because a lot of people are, when was the last time a man chased me? All those things are irrelevant. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You've raised a lot of valid points. Now, If we are talking specifically to Christians, the issue about making a good choice when you are not a good choice might be something we want to expand on. However, there are a lot of bad people that make good choices because they know what they are looking for. They know that they are looking for a well-brought up, well-connected homemaker, and they choose them in male or female versions. They are very strategic, very active, very discerning about what they want. Some of them will say, I know I'm not good, but I will not accept anything that is not good. And very surprisingly, they sometimes land a lot of good people. But I would probably say that maybe those good people had no idea how good they were. Otherwise, they would not accept such undeserving people. But that is a different story for a different day. But there are all kinds and shades of combination of that. But you have raised so many valid points about your heart being in the right place. I think that cannot be overestimated. And if we feel undeserving, even sometimes when the love even finally comes, to accept it is a problem. It's as though, this person that loves me like this, is there something more? Is it this? Is it that? And we begin to second guess and wonder why. It's almost as though people start wondering that, is it me that God has been so good to? What have I done? You know, that kind of thing. And they begin to think they don't deserve such goodness from God, even when the goodness comes. But the best is good for God's children. And that's what we should aim for. And that's what we should be. We should aim to be our best selves and choose likewise.